Hello, everybody. Welcome to Between Ears. It is the morning after Houston, and typically, this is the whole reason I do this taping the day after the game. We do the post game show. It's like a 10, 12-minute show. Last night it was 20 because there's so much to talk about. But the whole reason I do this more extended deep dive on the game is because I want to take some time for the game to really hit home to understand what went on, um, to kind of further evaluate, watch the tape, so to speak. But I, I mean, hours later, and it's still like I said last night. You're at a loss for words. You don't know what just happened. You don't know how it just happened. Um, that's a tough loss for West Virginia in more ways than one. You battle back. You're down 35 to 24. You get back in the game. You need a stop to get the ball back, but they get a first down. You need a stop again. They get the stop, but then you're pinned at your own 10-yard line. You got to go 90 yards to either to win the game or at least go about 60 or so to get into field goal range. You get to fourth and absolutely got to have it. And instead of just getting the first down, Garrett Green hits Hudson Clement in stride, and you're strolling into the end zone for the go ahead score with 12 seconds left. 12 seconds. It's all there is left. There's not a whole lot of things that can happen in 12 seconds, especially when you factor in you go to kickoff on the ensuing play. We all know where I'm going with this. It comes down to in that moment. Now, this game was not lost at all by Garrett Green removing his helmet. I'll say that 100 times over throughout this thing if I need to. It was a part of it. In that moment, yes, Garrett Green should not have taken his helmet off. But we understand that there was multiple things that happened throughout the game that led to that loss. Just like the Hail Mary wasn't the only thing that beat West Virginia last night. But in that moment, you take your helmet off, all of a sudden 12 seconds seems like 30 because you give them terrific field position. Just starting off by the kickoff, that's before the ball's even knocked off the tee. They get a somewhat decent return, wasn't nothing special. But then you give up the little check down play to the sideline, which I think is, you know, you're fine with giving that up. It doesn't matter if they get that, and it doesn't matter um, if they get 40 or so yards on the two plays they run, as long as they don't get in the end zone. But when you go back and you watch that final play, which was the Hail Mary, um, I'm confused to a certain extent because it didn't look like West Virginia had the right either personnel out there, or they just weren't lined up right. Like something just was odd about the play. And I don't understand why there was a linebacker hanging down, keeping his eye on Donovan Smith. I don't understand that whatsoever. I mean, again, in that situation, what for? If he takes off, let him take off. He's got to go over 50 some yards to win the game. And he's got to get by 11 guys, or at the very least 8 guys when he gets past the three that were rushing. So in that situation, I think you would have liked to have had that defended a little bit better. I think you would have liked your defensive backs to have been at the goal line and not taking their sweet time getting back there. I just think that Hail Mary defensive play was a mess, all over the place. Like if I had the tape with me right now and I could just pop it up, you would see exactly what I'm talking about. You need to just bring three. And honestly, and I know some coaches would probably never do this, but some coaches may be like, you know what, the hell with it. We'll drop nine into coverage for this. Make sure that there's no chance that they're going to complete this thing. But instead, West Virginia brought three, which is okay, but you had a fourth guy lurking around as a linebacker. It doesn't make sense. Um, but again, it doesn't come down to Garrett Green removing his helmet. It doesn't come down to the Hail Mary play. It all comes down to how do you not have this football team ready to play coming off a bye week? Again, I know it's a short abbreviated week in terms of an actual bye because you come back on a Thursday instead of a Saturday, but it didn't seem to affect Houston. Houston's defense had been atrocious all season long. They didn't miss very many tackles last night. West Virginia did. They couldn't stop the run game for whatever reason. And it seemed like once Houston kind of found their rhythm offensively, it was a little bit of trouble for West Virginia. When they went down 35-24 and Houston got the ball back, you had probably a feeling similar to mine. Is like, okay, this is probably it. Um, but you gotta love the fight, I guess. Um, to not pack it in, to mail it in, because I think easily a season or two ago, that game probably ends 42-24, or maybe just even 35-24, something like that. But you go back to not having this team ready to play, and it's an embarrassment. Again, it really is, especially against. I know we try not to make it about Dana and everything else, but it's hard not to. I mean, the guy that was here that had openly said that you can't get West Virginia kids to, or you can't get kids to West Virginia to win a Big 12 title. And again, it's you can make whatever out of it that you want, but last night was an opportunity to kind of prove him wrong, and you almost did. How ironic would that have been that Hudson Clement, a West Virginia kid, would have been the one that had the game winner? But there's going to be excuses that float around. There's going to be oh, they didn't have the Tomas Remax, they didn't have the Wide Miloms of the world, they didn't have the Aubrey Burks, Trey Lathan. They're trying to work in Ben Cutter, da 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 da. It you're facing the worst team in the Big 12 in front of a stadium that was maybe 15 to 20% full. You played Penn State in Happy Valley. You played Pitt in front of a absolute packed Mountaineer field. You played TCU even in it may have not have been a complete near capacity field stadium that day at Amon G. Carter, but there was a pretty rowdy crowd for a little bit. This is nothing new. If anything, it, this is easy going into a place like that. You don't have to worry about the hostility of the fans. You don't have to worry about noise being a factor. And it almost felt like, for whatever reason, and as I put in my initial thoughts article last night, like there was a lack of fire, there was a lack of energy, a lack of confidence from this team, almost from the jump. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it was because there was not very many people in the stands, and that's something that this team has fed off of all season long, be it at home or away. But good teams create their own energy. Good teams find ways to win. We've talked about that through the first 5 weeks when they got off to that 4-1 start. Good teams just find ways. Bad teams find way to lose. And there's still so much football left to be played. You're halfway through the season. You're 4-2. At the end of the day, you're still happy with the start through 6 games. Again, you tell me that they're 4-2 at the beginning of the season. I'm telling you that's a hell of a start. But it can all be washed away very, very, very quickly. You return home next week against Oklahoma State, and this is a game to see what you're really made of. This is a game that's really going to show what Neil Brown, what these coaching, what these coaches are about, what these players are about. Because not only do you lose a game you shouldn't have lost, but you lost a game in an absolute heartbreaking fashion, something that is almost traumatizing. Going up with 12 seconds to go, you think you have the game won, only to find out a couple of plays later, you lose. That's a hard, hard deal to get over. The good thing is they've got a couple of extra days to get past that because it was a Thursday game. They don't play again until next Saturday. But you're about to find out what this team's really about. Can they actually move on from this, put it in the past, and use it as fuel, use it as motivation, and get back on track next week against Oklahoma State? Again, a team you should win, especially at home. They're playing better, but it's still a team that you should win at home against. And do they stay in the Big 12 picture, or is this the start of an absolute downfall? Are we going to, a month from now, go back to this Hail Mary or go back to this Houston game and point this game out as this is where it all went downhill? Or is this the one you circle and say, this is the one that really kind of was a blessing in disguise to some extent and really helped kind of forge the rest of the season in a good direction? Because I'm telling you now, like 4-1, 2-0 start in the Big 12, that's great. It is. But it doesn't matter when you follow it up with a loss against one of the worst teams in the Big 12. And it sure as heck will not matter whatsoever if you trip up again and stub your toe again next week against Oklahoma State, and all of a sudden you're 4-3 and 2-2 in Big 12 play. I mean, Neil talked all week about how this team deserved to be ranked. Maybe there's a reason voters didn't believe in you. Maybe there's a reason they picked you 14th in the preseason Big 12 poll. And that's why they didn't rank you after a 4-1 start, having not beaten a single top 25 opponent. You have to earn that number next to your name. You have to. And it's going to take a long, 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 long time to get that number next to your name now. When you have a blemish on your schedule like you do, with no top 25 wins, and being ranked is the last thing that Neil needs to be worrying about. It just is. You go out, you take care of business, everything else will fall into place. If you're supposed to be ranked, you'll be there. And who cares if you're ranked or not after week 5 or week 6 of the season? It doesn't matter. Just like ESPN bracketology, when Joe Lunardi says, hey, West Virginia is going to be a number 9 seed this year. It's October. I don't really care about it. We put those projections out and we show what those projections are because the fans like it. But it doesn't matter. Nobody knows what that team can do. Nobody knows how far West Virginia can go in basketball. Nobody knows what West Virginia is really capable of until you go out there and prove it And last night was a huge missed opportunity. If you're going to compete for Big 12 titles, if you're going to be in the mix in late November, you cannot lose these types of games to bottom of the barrel teams. So this is your season right here. As hard as it is to get past, as hard as it is to bury, you've got to move on. Good teams overcome adversity. You don't want adversity, but when it comes, there's either two outcomes when you see adversity hit you. You either overcome it or you let it hit you and you fall back to a point where you can't bounce back. So West Virginia's got two options: stand up and face it or let it hit them. If they let it hit them, this could be a situation where you go from this tremendous 4-1 start, you're the talk of the Big 12, you're the talk of the country, to Neil Brown's got to be fighting for his job again in late November against what is, on paper, an incredibly weak schedule. So we'll see what happens next week. They're not out of the Big 12 title picture. As of right now, it's one loss. They're 2-1 in Big 12 play. They're just as much in this thing as anybody else. But if they lose next week, it's over. So there's still a path to 6 wins, clearly. There's still a path to 7 or 8 wins. And I think even if you get to 7 or 8, you probably feel pretty good about where the team is. Again, we'll see. It depends on how those games unfold. If it's a lot of undisciplined stuff, if it's uncompetitive football, maybe 7 or 8 wins isn't enough. And this is exactly why I'm trying to hold off on my on my judgment of Neil and the job he's done this year, because there's a lot of runway. And when you have a lot of runway and there's still a lot to prove, there's a lot of unknowns. Who knows? Does he get this thing to actually take off, or is it still stuck on the runway? We're about to find out next Saturday. So this one, again, you could point to it to Garrett. You could point to the Hail Mary. You could point to Jalen Anderson not holding on to a touchdown that turns into an interception in the end zone. You could point to Jordan Leslie not having his team prepared enough. You could point to the run game not being able to get anything really going against one of the worst defenses in the Big 12. But it's a collective thing. You win as a team, you lose as a team, like Neil Brown said, and it's as true as can be. It wasn't just one defining moment, but there's a lot of defining moments in this game that really kind of handed it to Houston. You can't give games away. This is year 5. Year 5. These things can't happen in year 5. You can get away with it in year 1 and year 2. We've talked about this for the last 4 years. You can get away with that in year 1 and 2. You can't get away with it in year 4 and 5. You need to win football games. So, I mean, how do you bounce back from this? How do you it still blows my mind how you come out of the bye week, have that time to prepare against the worst, arguably the worst team in the Big 12, and that's what you see take place on the field. I don't know. And Neil can be upset all he wants, and rightfully so. But at the end of the day, this falls on him. Players taking their helmets off, dumb penalties, poor technique, poor tackling, a lot of just bad things that happen, that all falls on the head coach. He's ultimately responsible. So we'll see. Does this team actually trust the climb, or is this just a fool's gold 4-1 start? In about 8 days, we'll find out. So that'll do it for me here today on the morning after. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube at Mountaineers Now. Give us a like. Also follow us on X at Mountaineers Now. And we'll see what the schedule looks like here in a couple of days. I may try to bring Eugene back on to kind of further dive into this thing, or maybe Chris, since we have a couple of extra days to play with before game week starts. We'll see. So stay tuned, subscribe so you can get that notification when a new video does drop, and you can take that in as well. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you soon. Take care.